The festive season is a time for family, a time for joy and togetherness, often marked by gatherings that bring immediate and extended families closer. However, with technology and social media playing such a central role in our daily lives, these gatherings can sometimes become battlegrounds for modern etiquette. From checking notifications at the dinner table to sharing moments online, the digital age raises complex questions about privacy, boundaries and traditional norms. For more on this now, we're joined by social media analyst Preetesh Sewraj, who joins us now. Thank you so much for your time on the program, Preetesh. So, how has social media influenced the way families interact, particularly when we look at gatherings?
Yeah, good morning, and thanks for having me on. I think one of the key social dynamics that's changed thanks to social media is that you can now have access to the outside world and to individuals who are not in the room while you're having a discussion. So you can be around the dinner table, but while you're around that dinner table, you can bring in other external people into that experience. One, by sharing what's happening, or two, by being part of what's happening in their world at that moment. So it's no longer just the people around the dinner table. It's a much larger world these days, thanks to social media.
It's turned us into one big global village. But also, is it acceptable for guests to perhaps be on their phones during meals? Or does this violate traditional family etiquette? Because I know I had a chat with my bulletin editor who actually says he gets offended when people whip out their phones to take pictures of food, for instance.
Yeah, it's such a tough one because I'm going to give you what's socially acceptable. Socially acceptable is you should not be on your phone. You should not be taking pics. You should not be taking away from that time with any individual or any group of individuals by relying on your device as a crutch during those times. Having said that, we also need to face reality. And the reality is it does happen. And what it really comes down to is how do you navigate that situation as a social group, as a family? What are the rules that you set in place for those individual experiences and dinners or meetups or gatherings? It's never going to be a one-size-fits-all kind of solution. It has to be based on that social group at that particular moment.
Preetesh, doesn't this then become somewhat formal, because if you're going to be schooling people or giving them the 101 around really behaving when we are a family or have gathered as a family or friends or whatever the case may be, that it just sort of like formalizes things. How do we go about perhaps making these conversations easy as well as conversations that are open when it comes to these social settings?
Yeah, I think you've got to normalize what the expectation is. It's time, place, circumstance. And that's what you've got to remember. What's the time, what's the place, and what's the circumstance? I think of a time where I'm old enough to remember a time when it was pretty normal for my dad to have guests over who came in and then lit up a cigarette in our lounge and people would smoke and it would be normal. And it's a faux pas. It will not happen today. I think social media is in that state of flux right now as well, where we're trying to figure out what's the norm. And again, it's not making it too formal by dictating and saying we don't want phones at the table. It's really saying what we want you to do is focus on this kind of experience. And therefore, what we as society have to do is look at the time, look at the place, look at the circumstance, and based on that, set the kind of experience we want and the kind of role we want phones and social media to play in that experience.
And I want us to also, broaden this up to also, the boundaries that we also rightfully talk about right now, in terms of what are the boundaries when it comes to sharing photos of others, especially when it comes to children online, because, you learn at broadcast school that there are guidelines that guide, showing pictures of children, for instance. But in these setups, there are none of those.
Yeah, there are none. I mean, we've all been given the opportunity to be able to publish our own content with none of the guardrails in place so that we know just what we're liable for by publishing that content. And I think what we've got to remember is that when you put anything on social media, it's deemed as having been published. So it's the same way as, appearing on television or on newspaper or any of those kind of spaces. So what you've got to be careful is make sure that, especially when it comes to minors, that you are actually getting the permission of not just the parents, but of the minor as well. And it's tough. I'm not speaking about 2-year-olds and 3-year-olds. There you need to get the parents into it. But if you're speaking to teenagers as well, it's a 2-level of permission that's required. The parent as well as the individual, because what you can be doing by posting images that they're not happy with is violating their personal rights. And you never want to be in a situation where you have a beautiful situation where you've had a great time out, and it's now led to some sort of antagonism because you've posted images from a point where people deemed it to be confidential.
And just how should families handle disagreements about posting private moments like, a feud on social media?
Yeah, I think the key thing is you got to remember is don't, please don't. I know Christmas is a tough time and the festive season is a tough time. Emotions are high. Social media is not the place to actually sort it out. There's a lot of people who think that going to social media and highlighting it will name and shame and embarrass individuals. It does that, but it also puts you in a very precarious situation in being seen to defame individuals. So from a legal standpoint, my recommendation is that think about the legal standpoint and how you'd be seen in that type of context. Don't put anything on social media that could potentially come back and be, can be used against you in a legal setting or even in a moral setting for that case.
And top of the conversation, we also spoke about just how social media has turned us into one big global village. Do you think this digital age that we're talking about right now has helped us or perhaps even hindered the value of in-person connections during festive gatherings?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of social media. I think it's an amazing tool. And I'll always it's such a simple example. A motor vehicle is an amazing tool for mobility, but it's also, as we've seen in places like Germany recently, can be used as a weapon against a whole lot of people right there. What we've got to see, social media is the same. It's an amazing tool that moves society forward, and that's where the value really lies in social media. But it does not stop a few people from looking at it and weaponizing it. So what we've got to be careful is in this process, as responsible individuals, that we use social media in a very responsible way, and we also protect ourselves in it being weaponized against us.
And we're seeing many children right now being opened up to technology, and they're also being opened up to consuming content on these spaces. Sometimes this content cannot necessarily also be good content or great content as we may. How do parents also navigate this obstacle? Because some children are even getting these mobile devices or any other device for Christmas.
Yeah, it's pretty tough because once you're on the World Wide Web and on social media, your child has access to a number of different sites that you may not want them to have access to. So some of the things is what you got to look at is social media and technology companies have a responsibility to protect your child. One of the things we can see is that you can monitor your child's device using, for example, if you're on Android devices, and most of South Africa is on Android, you can actually monitor your child's usage and the kind of apps they download, what they have access to, how long they spend on it, using Google's supervised platforms and their Family Link program. So Family Link, got to remember that those two words, it's on the App Store, you can download it. So you can monitor your child, you can take care of your child. And the other best thing is just simply monitor how long they have access to their device and how they actually use their device in certain settings. Set the rules, not allowed at the dinner table, you're allowed 30 minutes to use it right now and no other time. And then obviously have the right tools in place to be able to monitor what they're using. It's not foolproof, but it's the best that we have at this time.